The last chapter closed with no chapter, only a life in quiet motion. But tonight, as streetlights began to flicker against the winter dark, something unseen waited to unfold. The cold had come early to Greenwood Springs. That year, thick air that stung the lungs and turned bare hands raw. The kind of cold that whispered to everyone to stay inside, lights low, curtains drawn. But at the edge of town where the asphalt crumbled into frost-bitten grass and the street lamps blinked on and off in a weary rhythm, one man stood alone. Ava Thompson had often walked this way, head down, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. The streets here led nowhere in particular, just old warehouses, a shuttered diner, a forgotten bus stop leaning beneath a sagging maple tree. But tonight even Ava paused. There beneath the flickering lamp, an old man stood. His coat was faded military olive, its brass buttons dulled with age. The airborne patch on one shoulder hung by threads, a ghost of past service. A battered cap sagged atop wisps of gray hair embroidered in worn gold 80th 2nd Airborne Division. He shifted from foot to foot, thin shoulders hunched. In one trembling hand, he clutched a canvas bag. In the other, a folded scrap of paper with barely legible writing. His lips moved softly. Route 12, Oakmont, or was it Pine Ridge? The words drifted out like fog unnoticed. Cars whooshed by. Teenagers laughed into their phones, earbuds and untouched by the old man's fragile world. A young mother hurried her stroller across the icy crosswalk, never glancing toward him. He was invisible. To them, he was not history-only age, but not to Andre Whitaker. Seated on a chipped curb across the street, Andre watched. 18, lean as a sapling in winter, Andre knew about invisibility. His delivery bike leaned beside him, bent from too many miles. A dented water bottle rested between calloused hands. He'd made nearly a dozen runs that day. One more, and he'd scraped together enough to pay his weekly rent at the boarding house. His cracked phone screen read 7:42 p.m. The final delivery awaited. But across the street, the old man swayed again, unsteady, as if the cold had seeped into his very bones. No one stopped. No one even slowed. Andre's throat tightened. He knew what this was, the look of someone unmoored adrift between moments. Something in him older than his years would not let him turn away. He stood, slung his delivery bag over one shoulder, gripped the handlebars of his rusted bike, and crossed. "Sir," Andre said softly, approaching with care. "Are you all right?" The man blinked, eyes milky but searching. They settled on Andre's face, and for the first time all evening, he smiled, a faint, tired smile worn thin by life. "I was waiting for the 12, he whispered. "But I think it ran early. Or maybe I'm late." Andre glanced down at the man's cracked boots, the uneven laces, the frayed dog tag chain barely visible beneath his coat. He knelt slightly, voice steady. "What's your name, sir?" There was a pause, a flicker of confusion. Then clarity broke through. "Walter Jameson, Captain, United States Army, retired." He managed, voice as thin as paper. "Captain Jameson." Andre nodded. "Do you know where you live?" Walter looked to his bag, fingers fumbling. Out spilled old receipts, a mint tin, a VA card, but no address. Then Andre saw it, the dog tag. Leaning closer, he read Walter Jameson. Oakmont, 48 Oakmont Drive, North Side. Andre's breath caught. Oakmont was nearly 2 hours away uphill, well past the neighborhoods he usually delivered to. His gaze flicked to his phone, 7:43 p.m. He could make his delivery barely and earn the rent to stay warm one more night. If he helped Walter, he'd miss the deadline, and with it, his room. He tightened his grip on the handlebars. His heart pounded. No one else had stopped. No one else would. And yet, was it really on him? Walter shuffled forward again, unsteady. His mouth moved, but no words came. Andre felt it then, that invisible thread pulling him toward a choice. He looked at Walter's face, creased with age, eyes clouded, but flickering with distant fire. His decision was made. "I know where that is," Andre said quietly. "It's far, but I can take you." Walter blinked, surprised. "You'd do that? For an old man?" Andre smiled, small sure. "You're not just any old man." He removed his scarf, patted the rear bike rack, and offered his jacket. "It'll be cold." With careful effort, Walter climbed onto the bike's rack, clutching the frame. Andre steadied him. His own legs trembled not just from the cold, but from what he was about to attempt. And then with a deep breath, Andre began to pedal toward Oakmont, leaving behind warmth rent and the easy choice for something harder and far more right. The first stretch was flat, mercifully quiet except for the creak of the bike chain and the whisper of bare branches above. Walter sat hunched, fingers curled tight around the frame. Soft words escaped him, fragments of names, places, memories no one else could hear. Andre rode slowly, careful with every jolt. Frost-laced shop windows flickered past. The last bus rumbled by in the opposite lane, unaware that someone had been left behind. His thighs burned. Each turn of the pedals grew heavier, but he pressed on. Above them, stars began to appear sharp and cold against a velvet sky. "You remind me of my son," Walter said suddenly, voice clearer. "Except he hated bikes. Always wanted to fly." Andre glanced back briefly. "Was he in the Air Force?" Walter nodded, slow and proud. "Followed me into service. Told him not to. But sons don't listen." They rode on. The town fell away behind them, swallowed by blue-gray countryside. Ahead, the road curved sharply upward. Oakmont was uphill nearly the entire way. Andre gritted his teeth. He had little left to give, but something deeper kept him moving, an invisible thread woven tighter with each mile. Walter's voice softened again. "You didn't have to stop." His words trembled with more than cold. "But you did." Andre's chest ached, not just from effort. "I couldn't not," he whispered. And so they rode on into the deepening night, one boy with nothing but a rusted bike and one forgotten soldier, neither knowing that this moment would change them both forever. The distant town lights had long disappeared behind them, swallowed by cold and shadow. The last chapter closed with Andre pedaling uphill into the dark, Walter's frail figure, hunched behind him, both bound by a quiet thread of choice and courage. Now the air thinned. Frost nipped at Andre's exposed skin, each breath sharp as glass. The final mile toward 48 Oakmont Drive curved steeply, winding like a question mark into the night. Walter sat still on the back rack, one gloved hand, gripping the frame, the other resting softly on Andre's shoulder. His humming had faded. Now he whispered fragmented names into the wind. Eddie, 1944, Charlie Company, memories lost to time, surfacing through cold and exhaustion. At last, the iron gates of the estate emerged from the dark, their posts marked by a weathered brass 48. The sight nearly buckled Andre's trembling legs. He dismounted, teeth chattering, knocked twice on the call box. A pause, then lights flickered on. Moments later, a tall man in a robe opened the door, eyes widening in disbelief. "Captain Jameson." "My God, where have you been, Walter?" Weary but lucid, managed a faint smile. "Went for a ride," he murmured. Andre stepped back instinctively, ready to vanish. But Walter's frail hand caught his wrist. "Thank you, soldier." The words struck Andre deeper than the wind. He nodded once a voice caught in his throat. Without another word, he turned his rusted bike downhill, legs burning, chest sore, but heart steady. The ride back into town was quieter than the climb had been. No voice hummed behind him now, only the soft tick of the chain and the wind against his ears. Walter's final words echoed in his mind. "Thank you, soldier." He didn't feel like a soldier, just a tired kid with a bike and a few crumpled bills. By the time he reached the peeling porch of the boarding house, it was well past 11 p.m. He half hoped the landlord had left the door unlocked. Maybe mercy lingered, but hope shattered at the sight of the plastic grocery bag waiting by the door. Inside, his folded shirt-worn towel-cracked phone charger, his life in a bundle. Above it, a note scrawled in impatient marker, "Past due. Locks changed." Andre didn't knock. He knew there was no point. He sat on the porch steps, hugging himself against the cold. He could have cursed. He could have cried. Instead, he stared at the darkened streets, chest hollow. He had made the choice, the harder one. And now there was a price. With numb fingers, he pushed his bike back into motion, wandering aimlessly. The streets had emptied. Only headlights pierced the dark. Above, the stars glittered indifferent. Past midnight, the town had grown silent. The glowing sign of the 24-hour gas station flickered weakly in the distance. But Andre turned instead toward Johnson's Market, the old brick building at the far end of Main Street. Behind the building, he knocked gently on the side door. A pause, then light flickered inside. The door creaked open. Mr. Johnson stood there in a flannel robe mug steaming in one hand. He took one look at Andre, pale shivering inside. "Didn't make rent, huh?" Andre shook his head. Mr. Johnson muttered something about the damn cold, then stepped aside. "Storeroom's dry. Cot's still in the corner. Don't touch the wine crates, and don't freeze to death." Andre's voice trembled. "Yes, sir." Inside, the air smelled of cardboard and citrus. The cot was thin, the blanket thinner, but it was safe. He lay down exhausted beyond words. Walter's smile flickered through his mind. "You remind me of someone I love." For the first time in weeks, Andre didn't feel forgotten. Morning came reluctantly. Pale gray light filtered through the grimy storeroom window. Andre stirred, legs aching from the brutal climb. Last night's ride felt like a dream, but every sore muscle told him otherwise. He rose quietly, swept the floor as he always did. Routine was safety. Movement was warmth. He didn't expect anything to change. But just after 9:00 a.m., as he peeled a banana, Mr. Johnson had silently placed on the counter a sleek black car rolled to a stop outside. Clean, polished, out of place. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out, checking a piece of paper, eyes scanning the storefront. When the bell above the door chimed, even Mr. Johnson looked up. "Excuse me," the man said, voice calm but intent. "I'm looking for someone named Andre." Andre froze. "That's me." The man smiled faintly. "Captain Walter Jameson sent me. He remembers everything now, and he insisted he wants to see you. Wouldn't rest until I found you." Mr. Johnson sipped his coffee slowly, eyes narrowing. Andre's heart pounded. The number he'd scribbled on that torn receipt, it hadn't been meant for anything more than kindness. "I'm Charles," the man added. "May I take you back to Oakmont?" Andre hesitated. He looked at his trembling hands at the worn floor beneath his feet. The world of polished floors and high ceilings didn't belong to him. But something in Charles's voice held no trace of pity, only sincerity. Andre glanced at Mr. Johnson. The old grocer shrugged. "Go," he said. "Your cot'll still be here, if you need it." With slow steps, Andre followed Charles to the waiting car. The engine purred softly, the warmth inside a jarring contrast to the cold he carried. As the car pulled away from Main Street, Andre stared out the window. The town blurred past his empty porch, the streets he'd pedaled alone. He had chosen the harder road, and now somehow it had chosen him back. The black car moved steadily through the winding roads of Greenwood Springs' morning sun, slanting through the tall pines. Andre sat in the back seat, silent, watching the town fall away behind him once more. His battered backpack rested at his feet inside a change of clothes, a notebook, a worn library card, and the battered phone that refused to charge. Across from him, Charles drove without small talk, letting the quiet fill the space. As they climbed higher, the same trees that had towered like sentinels during Andre's nighttime ride now shimmered beneath the soft light. The cold road that had punished him just hours ago seemed gentler now, almost welcoming. But Andre's heart remained heavy. The events of the last night churned in his mind. He had no room to return to, no rent, no plan. He'd chosen the harder path, but at what cost? The car curved sharply, and the estate at 48 Oakmont Drive came into view. From the outside, it looked unchanged. Wrought iron gates flanked by ivy-draped stone tall windows, catching the winter light. Yet something about it felt different now, less intimidating, more familiar. Charles parked near a side entrance. "This way," he said softly. Inside, the house breathed warmth. Polished floors caught the sun. Shelves lined with worn books whispered of years gone by. The scent of tea and old wood filled the air. And there, seated near a tall window that looked out onto a quiet garden, was Walter Jameson. He was no longer the lost man shivering at a bus stop. His posture was firm shoulders, squared beneath a wool shawl. His eyes, sharp clear, lit up the moment Andre entered. Walter's voice caught with emotion. "You," he whispered. "You brought me home." Andre stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Walter extended a trembling hand, steady with intent. Andre crossed the room slowly and took it. In that grip, no words were needed. Something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, connection? Neither of them had chosen this moment, but both knew it mattered. Walter drew a slow breath. You didn't have to stop that night, he said softly. No one else did. Andre's throat tightened. I couldn't leave you there. Walter's smile deepened. And because you didn't, I remember now. Not just names and faces, but who I am. He gestured toward a nearby chair. Please, sit. Andre obeyed, his legs trembling slightly from both exhaustion and uncertainty. A young woman appeared with a tray of tea. She offered Andre a cup without a word, her smile kind. The china felt impossibly delicate in his roughened hands. Walter spoke again, his voice steadier. For months I've drifted, names, places, all faded, but something about that ride about you brought it back. Piece by piece. Andre looked down, unsure how to respond. Walter continued softer now. You reminded me I'm still here, that I still have worth beyond a uniform or a title. The words struck Andre deeper than he expected. All his life he had felt invisible, a delivery boy with no roof, no standing, no place. Now this man, once a captain, spoke of worth, like it was something to be reclaimed, not earned. Walter reached into his coat pocket and produced a thick envelope. He placed it gently on the table between them. This isn't charity, he said firmly. It's an invitation. A room here is yours if you want it. No strings, no expectations. Just a place to be. Safe. Andre stared at the envelope. His pulse pounded. He wasn't used to kindness without a catch. Offers had come before from shelter's caseworkers, but always with eyes that saw him as a project, a number, a burden. But Walter's gaze held none of that. Only respect. I don't know, Andre whispered. I'm not someone who belongs in a place like this. Walter's eyes softened. Neither am I, truth be told. This house was too quiet for too long. I've lived too much alone. Maybe now, neither of us has to. Andre's throat closed around a wave of emotion he hadn't expected. He wanted to trust. He wanted to believe. But the voice of doubt echoed. You're just a delivery boy. You don't fit here. Walter must have sensed the hesitation. You don't owe me anything, he said gently. You already gave me more than I can repay. But you reminded me I'm still here. Now let me do the same for you. The words were simple, but they broke through something deep inside Andre. The wall he had built from too many nights alone, too many locked doors, too many unspoken fears. He looked at Walter, truly looked for the first time, not as a stranger or an old soldier, but as a man offering something rare dignity, without judgment. Andre swallowed hard. I'll need to think. Walter nodded, no disappointment in his eyes. Only patience. Of course. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Charles appeared silently at the doorway. I can drive you back when you're ready. Andre rose slowly. His legs still ached from the night's climb, but his heart carried something new. A weight, yes, but also a flicker of possibility. At the door, Walter called softly. Andre, he turned. Thank you, soldier. The words hit harder than any medal or title could. Andre managed a nod, voice caught in his chest. Then he followed Charles back to the car. The ride down the hill was a quiet one. Andre stared out at the winding road, the familiar town re-emerging below. His mind spun not with doubt, but with something stranger, hope. He had chosen the harder path, and now against all odds it had led him here. As they reached the edge of town, Charles parked behind Johnson's Market. Before Andre stepped out, Charles spoke softly. There's an envelope in the glove box. Your name's on it, Walter insisted. Andre blinked in surprise, but Charles only smiled. Take your time. As the black car disappeared down Main Street, Andre stood for a moment beneath the pale winter sun. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't invisible. Someone remembered him, and that changed everything. The side door of Johnson's Market creaked shut behind him. Andre stood alone in the narrow alley, the thin envelope trembling in his fingers. Its edges were crisp, its weight slight, yet inside it carried something far heavier than paper possibility. Walter's words echoed still. You reminded me I'm still here. Let me do the same for you. Andre's breath curled into the cold air. Part of him wanted to tear the envelope open right there. Another part feared what it might offer. He wasn't used to such moments. His life had been measured in thin chances and thinner promises. Hope was not a language he trusted easily. He slipped the envelope into his backpack and pushed the market door open. Mr. Johnson looked up from his register, one brow raised. "You gonna open it?" the old grocer asked gruffly, "or stare a hole through it?" Andre offered a small, uncertain smile. "I think I need time." Mr. Johnson gave a short nod. "Take all you need." That night, back in the thin storeroom beneath the flickering radiator, Andre finally unfolded the letter. The words were careful, deliberate Walter's handwriting, both precise and a little shaky. "This is not a contract, not a promise of the future I expect you to live into. It's an invitation, plain and simple. You've been alone long enough. I have space, a home that is too quiet. If you need a bed, it's yours. If you need school, we'll find a way. No expectations, no judgment, just one human reaching out to another. Walter J. Jameson. P.S. You helped me remember who I was. Let me help you become who you're meant to be." Andre read it once, twice, a third time. By the fourth reading, he folded the letter slowly, hands trembling not from cold, but from a strange, aching warmth he didn't quite know what to do with. He'd been offered favors before, half-hearted, conditional. But this felt different. It wasn't charity, it was recognition. By mid-afternoon the next day, the familiar black car rolled to a stop once more outside Johnson's Market. Charles stepped out, smiled quietly. "Room's still made up," he said simply. Andre nodded. He packed what little he owned, 2 worn shirts, his mother's photograph, the dog-eared library card, the phone that no longer held charge. As he slung his battered backpack over one shoulder, Mr. Johnson handed him a small brown paper bag. "Sandwiches," the grocer said. "Banana. Thermos of something hot." Andre blinked, gratitude choking his voice. "Thank you, Renar, sir." Mr. Johnson waved it off. "Go on. Maybe this time's the one that sticks." As the car wound back up the familiar road toward Oakmont, Andre gazed out at the passing trees. They no longer seemed towering and cold. Now they felt like centuries marking the path towards something new. Maybe this time he would stay. Life at Oakmont was not lavish. It was intentional. Andre had expected polished marble silence heavy with history. Instead, the house breathed warmth. Sunlight poured through tall windows. Books lined the walls, not for display, but well-worn with use. The rooms invited conversation, not reverence. His room was simple: a firm bed, a clean desk, a window overlooking a small garden where bare trellises stood ready for spring's return. Walter had insisted, "Decorate it as you like." Andre needed little. Safety itself felt like luxury. In the mornings, he sat in the greenhouse with Walter, who spoke in fragments, stories of jungle airstrips. Coded radio messages, nights spent beneath strange skies. Not war stories, but life stories woven with loss and grace. Andre listened, not out of politeness, but fascination. Each story stitched Walter's life more fully into the present, and in turn gave Andre pieces of purpose he'd never had. One evening by the fire, Walter spoke softly. "I've been fortunate and forgotten. The worst kind of wealth is the kind that outlives your purpose." Andre looked up from his tea. Walter's gaze was steady. "I don't want to build statues," he continued. "I want to build something alive, something that grows beyond me." From that spark, the Quiet Valor Fund was born. Walter named it himself, because the loudest courage, he said, is often the kind no one notices. Andre became his heart, not a figurehead, but a builder. He helped design the programs: a mentorship circle for teens aging out of foster care, a support system for elderly veterans with no families, a scholarship fund in his mother's name. They partnered with the local community center. Andre, now enrolled in night school thanks to Walter's connections, volunteered during the day. He painted walls, unpacked computers, stocked new bookshelves in the reading room. And once a week, he led writing workshops. "You have a story," he would tell the kids, "even if the world hasn't heard it yet." And in doing so, he began to understand his own. Andre still rode his old bicycle into town, not because he had to, but because it grounded him. The familiar creak of the chain reminded him that nothing worthwhile ever came easy. He always stopped at the refurbished bus stop Walter's Bench, the locals called it now. A simple plaque beneath the seat read, "Dignity doesn't ask to be seen, but when we notice it, everything changes." He'd sit there sometimes, eyes closed, remembering a cold night and a choice made for no reward except this. Each time he rose again, he felt lighter. Not because the weight of survival was gone, but because it had been replaced by something else, purpose. Spring returned to Greenwood Springs like a slow exhale, soft rains, blooming dogwoods, and the scent of something beginning again. On one such morning, Andre rode through town, familiar streets, now softened with meaning. His left pedal still clicked on every turn, but he liked it that way. Some things weren't meant to be fixed, just remembered. At the community center, a new flyer hung on the door. Quiet Valor Fund, new initiative housing support for veterans with cognitive decline. If the world forgets them, Walter had said then, we'll remember louder. Inside, Walter sat in his wheelchair posture, straighter these days. His memory still flickered, but his presence had returned. You're not becoming something, he often told Andre. You're revealing what's always been there. Andre was now in his second semester social work with a minor in nonprofit leadership. Words he once couldn't have imagined speaking aloud. The town that had once overlooked him now invited him to speak at assemblies, mentor youth who had learned not to hope. And still each week, he rode past Walter's bench, tilting his head in a small private salute. Because it all began with a ride not to be a hero, not to be seen, but to show up for someone who had been forgotten. And in doing so, Andre had found exactly what he never knew he was seeking.